This is the Alcohol Free Lifestyle Podcast, where you learn to live a life of health, wealth, love, and happiness.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is Victoria English, head coach at Alcohol Free Lifestyle. This is part one of a two-part series. We're going to talk about the journey to self, breaking free from alcohol and codependency. The inspiration for this short series comes from perhaps what might be my favorite poem. I did another episode on not so much a poem or a quote, the famous one, The Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. It's winter here in Colorado, and although we're having a fairly warm winter, like the rest of America, it's getting dark very soon, very early. So I'm spending more time in my books of poems. I like to read at least a poem or two per day, and I keep them by my bedside. Mary Oliver is one of my favorite poets, and I hope you enjoy the poem I'm about to share, written by Mary Oliver. And stay tuned as we talk about how this poem relates to our own journey, how we relate to others, and how certain patterns are impacting our alcohol consumption. So I'm honored to read these great words, which are not mine, but I sure love them. And I hope you do too. The Journey by Mary Oliver. One day you finally knew what you had to do and began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble, and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. And there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. My children know that poem. I read it to my son when he graduated from a very challenging chapter in his life. He returned the favor by sending me a beautiful canvas with that poem, and I have that hanging up in my room. So I'm curious what you think of that poem, and if you'd like to send me messages about it, you can follow me at Victoria English 1111 on Instagram, and we can discuss. I love to talk about poetry. So back to the topic. The way that I interpret this poem is to, and I hope it will help you identify if you are prioritizing others at the expense of your own well-being. So this episode, part one, will emphasize the emotional and behavioral patterns that lead to alcohol dependency or can reinforce them. That poem might hit home for a lot of you. And alcohol often becomes a crutch for dealing with the emotional weight of taking care of others. That might look like a lot of different things. Chances are you have it happening in many areas of your life. Maybe you're a parent, a grandparent. Maybe you're caring for aging parents. Maybe you're a teacher with a class full of children. Perhaps you're a leader in your business. Perhaps you are a father, a single father. Perhaps you own a business and you are accountable for many, many paychecks. Perhaps with Christmas coming, you're wondering, how can I get it all done? And during all of those situations, you may be neglecting your own needs. And the thought that may come up is, I need a drink. So, as I said, alcohol can become a crutch. It can be used to numb, to escape, to silence those inner voices whispering that we're neglecting others, whispering that we're also neglecting ourselves. You might know that you're neglecting yourself, but you resist doing anything about it. And that's external and internal. You may look in the mirror and notice that you look tired, or you've gained some weight, or you're misplacing things because you're always in such a hurry. The most painful thing might be the internal part, the fear of letting people down, the fear that people will think you're selfish if you take care of you. Could be the fear of being alone. Because if people don't need you to take care of them, what's that going to look like for you? So, codependency and alcohol, as I said, they can go together like peas and carrots. And often the codependency will happen before the alcohol comes into our lives. From a young age, you may have been living your life prioritizing the happiness and needs of others. It's easy to lose sight of yourself, isn't it? I had a family of origin that loved me, and each of my family of origin members faced significant challenges. There was alcohol abuse, mental health challenges, and often chaos. I learned from a young age that if I could be really, really good, I could cheer some people up in the moment. How about you? Maybe if you were funny enough, good enough at sports, good enough in school, pretty enough, handsome enough, whatever it looked like. The internal message was, if they're happy, I'm happy. And as it's referenced in the poem, the only life you can save is your own. Of course, as children, we didn't know anything about that. And so often, from a young age, we would try to deal with people's problems for them in an effort to fix them, to make those problems go away. We thought it was love. It's actually self-neglect, disguised as care. And so When alcohol comes into the picture, it can feel like a sense of relief. It can certainly feel like something we deserve. And in my own journey, it was so slow and insidious. I didn't know. I knew how I felt. I knew how I felt when I would do something so very well. And it didn't change the circumstances. It may have helped in the moment, but it didn't change the circumstances. And so I pushed myself and pushed myself. And as I grew older, I also grew kind of angry and resentful. Well, if you're struggling with alcohol, I don't have to tell you how dangerous resentments can be. And so that went on for a long time. And I didn't struggle with my drinking. I can look back now and see that it manifested in other ways, but certainly nothing as destructive as alcohol. In fact, some of the ways in which it manifested um, were partially um, were partly the reason why I was successful in other things. I had a great work ethic. I was disciplined. I was focused. And so, what are some signs that you may be putting others first? Because here's the thing, I'm going to test this out with you. If you're listening to this podcast, today is probably not the first day that you've recognized that your drinking is an issue. You've known for a while, right? Now, if someone you loved came to you and said, I think I have a problem with my drinking. Help me. Would you kick the can down the road? Would you not make them a priority? Or would you recognize their suffering and go by any means necessary, help them, get them the help that they need? Interesting, isn't it? And yet, maybe you've been listening to this podcast for weeks, months, years. We have people come into Project 90, our 90-day alcohol cessation program, after receiving our emails, watching us on Instagram for years. For years, they wait. And they wouldn't do that with someone that they loved. And so, what are some indicators that you're putting others first? Difficulty saying no, even when it compromises your well-being. How many times do you miss, say, a workout because you're saying yes to somebody else? How many times do you stay up late because someone needs something? How quickly will you cancel your own plans? When was the last time you carved out fun for yourself? I'm talking about real fun, not sitting with a bottle. Do you feel guilty or selfish if you take time for yourself? That's actually still a big one for me. I'm not going to lie. I have a lot of responsibilities, and there are times that I struggle with this. I do. It's a challenge. And I notice when it is beginning to take me off track. So if I put work and kids before something like my time with my Peloton, it shows up in my mood. Thankfully, it doesn't make me want to drink anymore. You see, but that's still dangerous territory for me. Because although I haven't had a drink in a long time, I still have behavioral tendencies. And if I stay stuck in that pattern for too long, it doesn't mean I'm going to drink again, but the way that I show up will be noticeably different. And I've been practicing now for years, doing it anyway. So I will turn off my phone, leave it in another room, go downstairs, get on my Peloton, get on my Pilates machine. And my mood is night and day. So I'm just letting you know that this isn't unique to people who are in the cycle of maladaptive drinking. What I am sharing is that by doing this work, I don't want to go drink over it anymore. I use healthier tools like making sure I get my butt on my bike, making sure I walk my dogs and get some sunshine, things like that. Some other things: constantly managing others' emotions while ignoring your own. Oh boy, this can be a big one. Especially, like I said, this can go way back. If you had people around you with unmanaged emotional regulation and you try to manage their emotions, that can show up. It can also lead to feelings like, I deserve a break, I deserve a drink. Using alcohol as a reward for surviving another day of people pleasing, which again, just like yesterday, didn't get you the results that you wanted. Do you experience anxiety or discomfort when you're not being productive or useful to someone else? That's a big one. If you are a mom and you have kids at school and they have all those committees, oh, the committees, and you think, I should say no to one of those committees this year so that I can do whatever. Go get a coffee, sit down, read a book, go to the gym, go for a walk, anything. Over apologizing or over explaining your choices to avoid conflict. If someone asks you to do something, and instead of just thank you, but that's not going to work for me, if you go into the whole thing to justify why you're not doing something, over explaining, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry for being a human and having boundaries around my time and my energy. How about this one? Feeling resentful, exhausted, or unappreciated and unsure how to change it. Feels exhausting, doesn't it? Gosh. And like I said, I can still fall into this. I just don't drink about it anymore. I notice it. I have people close to me who notice it. And we talk about it. And I take a breather. I'm really grateful to have those sorts of people in my life where we can have those open conversations. And I may notice it in them as well. It's a wonderful thing to be able to support the people in your life in a healthy way. So, how does this perpetuate drinking? Well, you're creating more stress. When we are drinking, we are already creating stress and chaos in our bodies and brains. And so you're drinking, you get that dopamine hit, you feel a sense of euphoria, relaxation. And then as the alcohol leaves your system, you have more adrenaline, more cortisol, the stress hormones, dynorphin, another stress hormone. So you've got this elevated stress. You've got emotional fatigue because aren't you so invested in others? Don't you want it so much for them? I know the feeling. I coach people who struggle with drinking, and I want it so much for them. I want it so much for you. And so it takes effort to learn how to balance those things, right? I didn't have those tools. Guys, we were like children of the 60s, 70s, 80s. We didn't have any tools. And then, of course, the sense of unworthiness. I can't fix anything. Nobody appreciates me. No one cares what happens to me anyway. Yeah, I know I'm drinking too much. So what? No one even knows I'm here unless they want something. Ask me how I know. That story wasn't true, by the way. My family loved me. My kids loved me. It was a story I created that began when I was young. And it's okay if that's your story too. Change is possible. And so, with all of that, with the emotional fatigue, the stress on our body, the state of chaos, alcohol is a highly addictive drug. So, you've got the cravings, you've got the consequences of your drinking, the side eyes from your family, right? It makes sense how drinking could become more and more and more of a coping mechanism to numb the pain of over giving. So here's a question, something to think about. When I read through those things, which of those signs do you recognize in your own life? What emotions come up? I look back at that version of me and I feel a sense of sadness. I wish I could go back and give her a hug and tell her it's okay. Are you upset with yourself? Are you upset with others? Just notice the emotions that come up. Does it help you understand why you're not breaking out of alcohol's grip? Because with awareness, which is the intention of this exercise, change becomes possible. So if you are aware now that you're exhibiting some of these patterns, did some of these signs resonate with you? That's good, because now you can make some changes. We can begin to imagine what life would look like without those patterns, how breaking free from alcohol might seem possible if we could release some of those patterns. Here's the tricky thing though, guys. It's really hard to break those patterns if alcohol stays in the mix. And that's another episode, if you've listened to many, about the neuroscience of what it does to the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and all of that. But I will tell you, if alcohol remains in the picture, these changes that we could implement are much less likely to stick. And it's not because of you. It's just what happens when the human body consumes alcohol on a regular basis, especially if it's being consumed to excess. And so a great place to start, rather than saying, oh my gosh, I gotta make all these changes, a great place to start would be to clear this, kind of start with a clean slate. Let's get the alcohol out of the way first. So the invitation is to book that 15-minute call with one of our coaches. It's free. We may not be the right program for you. Maybe not, but it's a huge step. It's a start. And untangling all of that other stuff is so much easier when you have a clear head, when your brain has returned to homeostasis, when you wake up refreshed in the morning. No foggy head, no headache, no sour stomach, no shame, no regret. So that's my invitation, to go ahead and book that call. In our next episode, we're going to talk about how to rewire our brain in an effort to break free from some codependent patterns and release alcohol. Until next time, thank you for joining me. Thanks for going deep. Thanks for going on this journey. Take good care.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about our stop drinking services, you can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com. You can follow me on Instagram at James Swanwick. Our YouTube channel is at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube, or you can send me an email at james@alcoholfreelifestyle.com.